This is the Critical Conversations podcast, a KPOV special project developed to feature unique perspectives and the courage it takes to go there, challenge mundane thought, and question the norm.
Lisa is a local healer. I'm assuming maybe some of you have met her. She owns Bend Reiki, and you also did Reiki in the hospital for a long time.
Yeah, there's a volunteer program there with the cancer center, and so I started doing that in 2011. And I did that for 3 years, and they still have it. I don't know if they're up and running again with COVID and everything, but that's a beautiful program over there.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Are you one of the people that helped start it?
Oh, I wish.
Oh,
no,
okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Nope. It was started there before by some nurses, and it was interesting because my husband works in advertising, and he told me about it because they were going to do an ad for it, and it was on his desk. And so he said, you need to look into this, since I've been doing healing work for a while. And so that's kind of how I got started doing Reiki here locally, I guess. Yeah.
Through your husband.
Through my husband, right?
Oh, wow.
Different channels.
I didn't know this.
So, yeah.
Yeah. Lisa and I have known each other off and on for, maybe a decade now.
Yeah.
And it's through mostly the spiritual energy healing realm, because we both do that. And I actually got introduced to a whole new healing technique, pranic healing, through you.
Oh.
And I think you had it was when you were doing the clinics.
That's right.
And I knew you, and you're like, hey, I'm doing this thing. So I came in and had an incredible experience and decided to do some training in it. And
perfect. That's right. And then you took some classes. I remember when I first met you, I was, we'd moved here in 2005, and I was around a lot of people who were, wonderful people, educators, but it was more scientific based, more athletes. And then when you came in on the scene, I was like, oh, you're a spiritual person.
Yeah.
So that
and
was
an
really
athlete.
And an athlete. I know, it all goes together, right? So, but it was just fun because it's like, because I've been doing that on my own side with, other friends and stuff. But you came in with a bang coming into town. And so that was really fun. Yeah. So I was like, Shanti, I do this too.
Yeah. I'm curious around when you started to work with energy. How long have you been doing it?
So it was funny because after I got married, I read a book called The Reconnection, and that was with Eric Pearl. And I was so blown away by it. And I'd grown up in a family who did lots of meditation. My brother was a Buddhist monk, so we had all that. But I never got into like the realm of healing. And so I read that book. I was in Portland, and I went back to the bookstore after I read, and I just was asking, is there another book that he's written? And they said, no, but he's actually coming into town to train on Friday. So it was one of those synchronous moments where I was like, okay, I'm just with an open mind, I'm going to go. And I was really blown away by just the impact. I think one of the first exercises too, and this was even before we got trained in anything, and he just said, put your hands, everybody, one person put your hand on the back of the person next to you. And we just did that for 5 minutes. And then after that, then he had people check. And people who maybe couldn't raise their arms all the way up over their head, everybody could do that now. So it was really fascinating. And that was even before training began. So anyway, so I was really intrigued with that, and then just kind of continued on my journey. So I did reconnective healing, and then I got into Reiki, and then even though all these things are amazing and wonderful, I think I'm just a curious person. It's like, and so he said, look into pranic healing, and then all these different modalities. So, but I think having different modalities out there helps maybe different people connect into it, different avenues. Maybe they have more of an interest in one or the other, and so they connect in that way.
Have you found one of them that really resonates most strongly for you that you practice, or do you kind of blend?
I do blend. I think I've gotten more into, I really have my heart in Reiki and doing the healing work. I like pranic as well. And I like the cleansing aspect of pranic healing.
Yeah.
And so if I can do a cleansing on the person doing pranic healing and I have a crystal, that tends to allow the Reiki energy just to flow really well when I do that. So, and there is something about that gentle touch and for them to feel the heat in your hands and you know how it is, like after somebody's had a session and then there's just a whole change in their visage afterwards. You know, they'll come in very stressed about things and then they'll talk to you about everything. And then you just say, okay, we're just going to lay on the table. We'll do some energy work. And it is really shifting energy that way. And it's so beautiful. It almost takes my breath away every time that happens. And then you see that a lot of life stress and anxiety and all that stuff, it's just energy. Yeah. So if you can just clear that, then you're back to just a balanced state. The body's back to its balanced state and you're just in this happy place. So
something that maybe it's not shared often, but you'll say yes to is that as a healer, we are sort of this, I call it like hollow bone. We're receiving the energy and giving it, but we're also benefiting from this flow that can flow through us.
100%. Yeah.
And I tell everybody, like, anybody can do this.
Yeah. Oh, totally.
It's not just, we're not special.
Well, that's what I love about, I remember when I did training, and I forget who it was, if it was Eric Pearl, or I also went to see Drunvalo and Melchizedek, but they're just talking about the need to demystify spirituality or to demystify like healing and making it is just part of who we are. And that goes to the component of the people without even taking any classes, just putting their hands on the shoulder of their neighbor and healing already occurring. So yeah, I 100% agree with that. And I think the more that, if you get hurt too, you put your hand on where it hurts. I saw my son, my 6-year-old, do that the other day. Or he hit his head and he was rubbing it with his hand and he just kept doing that. It's like, keep doing that. That feels better, right? That feels better. And then just introducing little things, to people with these little seeds. It's like, that helps, doesn't it? And just doing that. So
I love what you're sharing because as I'm getting older, I've been reflecting on my life and in particular my childhood, and to see how these seeds that have manifested now as this adult in her 40s were actually there in the child.
Love that.
And I'm curious for you, have you seen that for yourself? Like, have you looked back in your childhood and seen ways in which you were naturally working with energy unconsciously?
Ooh, that's a good question. I don't know. There's a point there, I think, where I was having these peak experiences, and it was, and I've told people about this before, it's like in high school, and I'd be driving and I'd listen to this music, and if I had the right combination of it and be in this beautiful place where I'm driving with all these trees, like I could get to these peak places. And I remember in college then, taking a psychology class and then learning about what was it, Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And then the first one is survival, and that goes all the way up. And at the top is peak experiences. And I never could put a label on what I was like, that's what I was experiencing. And so I feel like in turn during these sessions that I'm doing, I'm tapping into that same energy that I had during those times. So if that makes sense.
Yeah. I mean, it makes sense because I would assume everyone listening has had an experience, a mystical, unknown, can't explain, not quite sure, did that really happen? Am I going crazy? What was that type of experience? Or a peak experience where you are tapping into something and you feel bliss or just pure joy or, some really strong emotion out of nowhere, right? Like these things are available to all of us. And I would assume every person has had something,
I know. Yeah.
So
or
it makes
you
sense.
Hope, right. Or for people to know that is there. And then even to open up and say, hey, to the universe, maybe help me find something like this today. Even if it's like making tea and drinking it purposefully, or, going on a walk and just being open. I think that even in the simplest things, it can show itself maybe. So people can feel that. But yeah, because it did get to the point where, it's like, oh, maybe I've finished listening to this music or something. It's not giving me that same thing anymore. Yeah. So it's like, okay, so what is this? Right? So if it's beyond this, because I can only listen to a certain album and it gives me that high for a while. And then you go to some other music, and then, but then it can lose its charge, right? And so I think that's what tapped me into then more. What is that? Connecting to source, connecting into. And I was really lucky because both of my grandparents, I don't know why, this was the case, but they're tapped into kind of teachers of more spiritual realm. And so then I started going to what they had been taught and learned. So, and then finding comfort with that, or, kind of. Anyway,
that's super interesting, because a lot of even traditional religions or, mystical traditions have these sort of unexplainable, like angels, like Catholics believe in angels, and, I'm not going to go through all of them. That's just one, but it's like, we're constantly exposed to these possibilities of energies or experiences that we can't fully explain or understand.
Right.
And we're exposed to these ideas even as children. But it's like no one is, no, I'm generalizing. Sure. Most people aren't sitting down with their kids and saying, hey, we live in this field that's alive with energy that we can channel through us and use it for healing and for good.
Right.
And so it's like we kind of have to sort of stumble upon it and figure that out on our own, unfortunately.
Exactly. Or sometimes if you do tell them, they'll be like, oh, we don't want to listen to you. When they're young, I think they're very open and receptive to it. And then I have 2 teenagers right now. And so, they're kind of doing their own little path. And then, but I feel like people go through different phases and then they'll come back to it. But to have that basis, I think, to start that out with your kids too when they're little. And then when they get a little older and they start to question things, then they can come back to some stuff like that and like, oh, that feels familiar. My mom talked about that or something way back when, or she used essential oils, or use some natural products that really did help me, or I don't know. So yeah, those seeds are good to plant, even the simplest thing. So yeah,
this is something that I'm just curious about. Because, my journey as a healer started as a child, because my father was this amazing healer. He had a psychology background and he was a social worker, but at home, he's a musician, and he was teaching me energy healing and different techniques. And when I was 5, I broke my ankle. And he did hands-on healing, and the ankle healed within a week.
Wow. That's
and I knew it was healed, and I cut off my cast. My mom was so upset. And we went to the doctor, and the doctor was like, oh, well, it's healed.
Wow.
And so, that was... And then anytime I would get sick, he would lay hands on me and literally heal me.
I love that.
So, I was sort of like really raised in it. But here I have my children who, they are so resistant.
Right.
It.
Isn't it funny? Yeah. It's funny.
So I'm curious your experience as a mom with kiddos. And
now that you share that story, I do remember one, and it was after, and I would do Reiki on them a lot to go to sleep at night. And my 2 oldest, they like to share a room for a while. And so I'd be there and I could do Reiki on them, and they would go to sleep so quickly, and it was really wonderful. And I have taught them chants and stuff, and I think chanting is really beneficial to help, relieve stress and just bring you connected to the universe. But there was one time, my oldest, who's now 18, if he ever got hurt, it was really hard for him. It was he was very sensitive. And so I remember one time we were in the store and he fell on the carpet and then he got like those strawberry burns that were, and
those things hurt.
And I had just learned pranic healing at that point. And I remember they said, if you can do some work on it, it will take away the pain. And so I said, Miles, come on, let's go in the car. I'm going to work on you in the car. And so he got in the car and I started to do the sweeping. There's a whole technique with it, but it's pretty easy. I mean, it's something that, like we were saying, the simplicity of it maybe is too simple, so people wouldn't really believe that it could work. But I started working with him and just kind of sweep the energy off. And all of a sudden, he just stopped crying. And it was such an amazing thing because by that time, he was probably about 6. And you know, as a mother, you want to take care of your children and you want to offer them as much comfort and support. And so, to learn these healing techniques that you can do yourself offers so much freedom and joy because you're actually really able to take care of them. And I could see that too with your father.
Yeah.
I mean, right? As a parent, that's your ultimate goal is to be there to offer healing, love, and support. So, and if you are able to do that, what a gift. So
I like to think of healing in a couple ways, but before I get to that, I think moms actually intuitively know how to help their children in the moment, but I don't think they realize that what they're doing is shifting energy. Like I have a friend, she has 3 boys. Anytime they get hurt, she blows on the area. And she has no clue. But she's moving energy with her breath.
That's amazing.
And the kiddos, I watched it so quickly. They're fine. Or other moms will like rub it. Like you said, you mentioned this earlier, kiss it, or, like I actually think it's an unconscious skill.
It is. It is. Right. And you just think you're going through the motions and doing it, but actually something really big is happening. So it's that simplistic thing of what we're actually doing as humans that is really tapping into that larger component of our natural ability to heal and with our hands. You know, and I think of it too, because like my dog always comes up and she always wants, and she does that with the rest of my family too, but like, oh, I want your hand on me, right? Or like the cat, I want your hand on me. And there's, and I have heard too, there's chakras, in your hand, and there's lots of potent energy in there. So if people could just know that, and people who've come in for sessions too, and if they have something that's chronic, and let's say I clear some energy from them, I'll just say, at home, just put your hand on it and just send it love. Just send it love, and it really works. And we'll see if they do that or not, but at least that seed's there, because that's essentially what I'm doing. And if I can do it, then anybody really can do it. So,
yeah, I love that. I mean, I feel like the heart of this conversation is this empowering piece of like, you are capable of healing yourself. And I think it's a whole shift in consciousness to look at healing in the way of these more subtle energies. I mean, we know this because we've been in this field, but things actually happen first on the energetic field.
Yes.
And if it's sort of like doesn't get cleared, then it comes in the emotional and the physical, and that's when we start having issues, right?
Exactly.
And so if we can catch it, it's like a really great preventative measure for sure. And I think it's also shifting the consciousness to believe that it's possible and capable.
Yes.
It's like that permission to heal yourself and wow.
To be open to that. And I think receptivity is huge. And I think I find that with people on the table, if they come in and they're open, if they find me and they come in, they're open, it's just the most amazing session. So, so that would be receptivity within yourself. If, let's say you're trying to heal yourself and you put your hand on your arm, and just knowing, if you just knowing that maybe it won't heal 100%, but there is a shift going on. there is a healing going on. That's huge right there. So.
And to look at it like it might not be instant, right? Like, we so want, like, in our culture, these instant cures.
Take an Advil and
right. And if that's not happening, we doubt that anything's happening.
Yes.
When you're working on the subtle field, right, you actually can feel it instantly shift, but you have to really quiet your mind and tune in to yourself in a different way. Exactly. And so you can notice that instant if you're able to do that. But if you're not, you might still notice, but that's what I'm,
Right. And what I've noticed with people too, and I always tell them, even if you don't feel something, there is something that happened. And it could even be like perspective shift, right? And how you see things. And I've noticed that when people who come in and they may be a little more head in their mind, in their head a little bit more, and then they come in for more sessions, and then all of a sudden, so that's just like perception change, right? Yeah. And that's a huge thing too. But perception change can also occur within the physicality too. So, just so it's a journey. Sometimes it takes people, like, they'll come in for something physical, and then it takes them on this journey of their inner work, and I hate to call it work because it's not really, it's